Welcome to the Attention Deficit Disorder Expert Podcast Series by Attitude Magazine.
Hi, everyone. My name is Annie Rogers, and on behalf of the Attitude team, I'm pleased to welcome you to today's ADHD Experts presentation titled An Adult's Guide to Fostering Friendships with ADHD. Leading today's presentation is Caroline Maguire. Caroline is the author of the award-winning book, Why Will No One Play With Me?, written to coach emotional regulation, social and self-awareness, and responsible decision-making skills. She also developed the Fundamentals of ADHD Coaching for Families, which is a training program at the ADD Coach Academy and accredited by the International Coaching Federation. Forming and maintaining friendships does not get any easier with age. As life grows more hectic, social connections get pushed down our lists, and ADHD symptoms like social anxiety, RSD, distractibility, they all make friendships uniquely challenging for neurodivergent adults, which can lead to feelings of loneliness and isolation. So in today's webinar, we're going to talk about these challenges and how to achieve a greater sense of belonging with strong relationships. We'd like to begin today's webinar actually by asking you all a question. What is your biggest impediment to making new friends? And also, which of the following ADHD-related challenges do you feel are to blame for lost friendships in your past? Please select your answers, and you can also comment in the text box, and this will help us get a better sense of where we can focus our Q&A session today. In the meantime, for answers to common webinar questions about slides, transcripts, certificates of attendance, just click on the FAQ tab of your webinar screen. If you're listening in replay or podcast mode, you can visit attitudemag.com and search for podcast number 478 to access all those webinar resources. You can also click on the episode description wherever you stream your podcasts. If you support the work we're doing here at Attitude to strengthen the ADHD community, we encourage you to visit attitudemag.com/subscribe and sign up for Attitude Magazine. If you do it now, you can take advantage of our 2-for-1 holiday offer and get a subscription for someone else who could benefit from a little more ADHD understanding. Just click on the magazine tab on your screen to learn more. Okay, finally, the sponsor of today's webinar is Brain Balance. Brain Balance is an integrated cognitive development program designed to help kids, teens, and adults with ADHD, learning differences, anxiety, and beyond improve focus, attention, and behavior. Brain Balance creates a customized plan based on your child's needs to support their social, emotional, and academic growth. An exploratory study with Harvard's McLean Hospital found the Brain Balance program to be as effective as low-dose stimulant medication in alleviating ADHD symptoms in children. Scan the QR code on your screen or visit brainbalance.com to learn about Brain Balance today. Attitude thanks our sponsors for supporting our webinars. Sponsorship has no influence on speaker selection or webinar content. Okay, without any further ado, I'm so pleased to welcome Caroline Maguire. Caroline, thank you for joining us today and for leading this really important discussion for our community.
No problem whatsoever. I'm so happy to be here. Hi, everyone. And I am so happy to be talking about adult friendship with ADHD. I want to first out myself. I am not perfect at this. As a matter of fact, I am ADHD. I have learning disabilities, and I definitely struggle. And one of the things that I always say is I'm just the person who thinks about this all the time and really wants to give people the how. How do you do this? Because people say you need more connections. We know connection is now been proven through the Harvard Happiness Study as the thing that leads to happiness. But for us, it's not necessarily an easy or straightforward path. And part of that, I think, is that a lot of the advice you read is for people who are typical, who don't have our same study struggles. And so my goal here is to demystify the path to making friends a little bit. And there are obviously individual skills that some of you have mentioned in advance you wanted to talk about or you need to hear more about. But I think that there's this really important piece, which is that for us, sometimes this doesn't come easily. And we have all of this stuff from the past, right? So for any of us who are, who grew up, maybe we knew about our diagnosis, maybe many of you wrote that you are diagnosed later. There's all of this stuff from the past that influences how we feel about our friendship skills, how we feel about relationships and friendship in general. And so to start, I just want to make sure to acknowledge that and just touch on that. And part of this is these past experiences create this internal voice. And the internal voice, says maybe that we're not as good at friendship, maybe that things haven't worked out in the past. And so when we're trying to go out and make friends, we have that voice carried with us. But I also think there's another piece, which is that we need to sort of know what people are looking for in friends. And the fact is that a lot of people bring up to me, well, I'm not a great friend as an ADHD adult because I forget people's birthdays. So I did a deep dive into the research, and I want to tell you something. There is no research that shows that whether or not you remember someone's birthday is why or why not they are friends. People are looking for closeness, bonding, fun, feeling that they can, have a similar experience with you and share common interests. And we can do all that. We absolutely can do all that. So all of these things are rejection sensitivity, which I definitely have because I was bullied really badly. I definitely sometimes have to use that filter where I say, wait, you're probably not leaving me out. This is my little girl inside me who didn't get to sit at the table, right? That's with us. And we're going to, definitely we can talk about that. Managing the legacy of these past hurts. And sometimes our mindset that we have these friendship struggles or our feelings of scarcity or feelings that like I just don't have many people lead us into people pleasing, lead us into masking, and lead us into this tendency also to kind of give up and stop looking for friends. And so part of my sales pitch to you is that I know all that, I honor all that, but I do think that friendship brings us joy and gives us something special and that we can be great friends. And I think part of the key is that we have to approach friendship in a way that takes into account our neurodiversity and doesn't expect this perfection, right? And doesn't expect 100%. I might get better at blurting and interrupting. I still blurt and interrupt. I still have to sometimes, work on that or say, oh, geez, today is just not my day. So I think that piece of that mindset that there's, these things haven't worked out is a piece that we carry with us. And I want us to feel better about ourselves as friends, because what ends up happening is we accept less than we deserve. We deserve reciprocal, healthy relationships where people give to us and we give back, where we feel that they're enriching our lives. And if there's one little hack that I have, which is that I have been doing something for about a year with people where I just have them make a connection 3 times a day. So that could be saying hello to someone, that could be talking to someone in Starbucks. And it's just my anecdote, but people feel better because they're connecting with people. So I think it definitely is partly about opportunities to connect. So I want us to shift our mindset. So part of what I have found, and I'm out there, the person who's been talking about friendship for 18 years when no one else was talking about this, one of the things that I have found is that instead of having I should be, perfect mindset, to shift into an I'm practicing and I'm learning and growing mindset. Because if we expect to be practicing, to be in practice mode, to be in a learning mode, to realize that these relationships are potential relationships, that we are having these emerging friendships. Not everybody we meet is a friend. They're a potential friend. To be curious, to realize like we're going to make mistakes. We're going to come back from mistakes. To sort of say to yourself, instead of all the bad negative self-talk, and we'll get into this later, to say like, I'm making connections, I'm meeting people, and I'm practicing, then it gets easier because I'm not expecting things to be as easy, and I'm expecting to be learning and growing. So that's one of my first tips. The other thing is, I would love everybody to say aloud, what are you great at? What are your strengths? What do you offer in friendship? I don't think as ADDers we say this enough. We are empathetic. We are funny. We are curious. We are zany. We are all these wonderful things. And unfortunately, as children, people didn't recognize those things as much. And because they didn't recognize them, sometimes as adults, we forget. But I'm here to tell you that I would rather spend an afternoon with us than with anyone else. We are fabulous. So I want you to just start by saying, like, what are the strengths you bring to friendship? Maybe you are a great listener. Maybe you are funny. Maybe you are great at cheering people up. But we all have something that we bring to friendship that is special and is unique. Part of what I know from my experience and also research shows is that we meet people and we have friendship based on our proximity and our shared experiences, right? So everyone who says, oh, go find your people. We have another element, which is interest is our fuel. If we are interested, we are able to pay attention. If we are interested, it allows us to listen better. Interest is key in ADHD. So interest should be the focus of our friendships, because if we are sharing experiences and we are looking for people who share our interests, then it actually means higher levels of connection, right? Because what's the greatest moment in friendship? The greatest moment in friendship is when you meet someone and you both agree, right? Like you zing, you both think the same thing. You both have the same interests. Interest should be our guiding light. Not, oh, I'm going to join kayaking club because everyone says that that's where to meet people, right? It's really about having proximity with people, meeting many people, and having different friends for different purposes. You have different levels of closeness and trust with different people. We often maybe didn't have friendship models as kids. We often didn't have as many friendship experiences. So it's really important to think about the fact that who we become friends with matters, not just having anybody, right? We want to be friends with people who are like us. And to have those zings and those bonds, it's really important to have activities and shared experiences. And studies actually show, too, that if you're in proximity with people, if you have sort of friends by situationship, that you bond and you get closer. Now, the other piece of this that I know people are going to write in the comments, I hate small talk. I want us to shift away from thinking of small talk as like the most boring thing in the world. A lot of people in their sort of pre-questions for this webinar said they want to know, how do you guard against becoming friends with someone who's not good for you, who's toxic? Small talk is feeling people out. It's getting to know people. It's getting to know their interests. It's also getting to know the things that are maybe red flags. And so even though I know we find small talk boring, and I have many things on my website about how to make it more interesting, that small talk and those chats you have when you join an activity or you're volunteering or you're doing something with people who share your interests are going to be another way to build trust, to get to know them, to feel them out, to see if they are worthy of you being friends with them, because they don't just get to be our friend. We get to feel them out, which I know is not something we think of, because what we tend to think is, I'm not great at friendship, so I have to take anybody. And that's just not true. And this friendship bonding piece comes in from these high interest experiences where we are like, hey, you too. It also allows us, like I said, to engage our executive function better and to have those situations where we are able to feel really great. So high interest activities, I can't even stress enough, are a huge key. If we're demystifying, like, how do you make friends as an adult with ADHD? And there's different phases of life. And I know many of you wrote and said, this particular phase, how do I make friends? So this is general advice, but here's what I would say. We can think about, watch, and learn about, in our phase of life, what are the high interest activities? Where are the places where you could join and participate? Participation is a huge piece. So when I say participation, I mean going somewhere, joining an activity, volunteering, doing something, getting to know people, making small talk with them, getting to understand them, and see how they treat other people, see how you enjoy them, and have those times when you enter the circle of participation with them. You continually come together and then come apart. Every time, because our tendency is to say, I want to rush into friendship. I want the friendship to just happen, right? Does this resonate with you? But here's what my sales pitch. Every time we participate with someone else, we have a chat with them, we bond with them, we go to yoga with them, we do the kayaking with them, we go for the hike in the hiking club. You get to know them and they get to know you. You build trust with them. You see how they treat people. They see how you treat you. And you're going to have these experiences to build toward friendship. With our tendencies, we tend not to see it as a building process. We tend to see it as I go in, I meet people, I rush in. When we rush in, we give people our trust really quickly. And sometimes then we find out, oh, red flag, they're not that nice. Part of that comes from this mindset we have that we have to take whatever we can. I want us to reset that mindset. We're practicing, we're getting to know people, and we don't have to take anything less than someone who treats us great. So we're in the circle of participation. We're in these high interest activities. Now, I have been keeping a list and doing research and talking to tons of people and crowdsourcing. And what I love are activities where you have a role or an excuse to get to know people and an excuse to reach out after that activity to get to know them more and to see them outside the activity. Because one of the things that we struggle with often is, I see this person at yoga, I see this person at work, I like them, and I never really bridge outside the activity. I never really see them more. If you have certain activities, they have excuses built in, not only to participate with people and not just be on your own, but also to see them after. So cooking classes, animal rescue, build a house habitat for humanity, dog parks, see people all the time, frequently. I got this all from other ADHD adults, by the way. Volunteering, I love, because then you're organizing the beach cleanup, so you get to reach out to people and you get to have that excuse. Improv clubs, any special interest club. So the idea here is that part of what we're doing is we're having these shared experiences with people, and we're also having a next step where I can now reach out to you, which I'm going to get to in a minute. So I talked about this rushing into friendship. So I know some of you are probably like, well, all that sounds like a lot of work. And what I like to do is I meet someone, we zing, and we're instantly best friends. And I totally resemble that remark. Here's the thing. When we rush into friendships, sometimes we label people as friends and we call them friends, and then they disappoint us. But part of this is there are different levels of trust and intimacy and different levels of friendship. And sometimes we're labeling someone as a friend who's really an emerging friend or an acquaintance. And so we're expecting a lot of them. We're expecting them to offer us emotional support, for instance, when they are somebody we barely know. And sometimes I've had this happen with clients where they're supposed to meet someone for coffee, someone they met in that club that they enjoyed. And they're like, oh, that person didn't show up, or they didn't come, or they canceled. And I'm so upset not to see my friend. And so this is my distinction, because they weren't actually a friend. They were an emerging friend and they were an acquaintance. And that feeling of labeling them as a friend also, I think, triggers our rejection sensitivity. So I am going to give you this hack. Don't label these emerging people as friends. Think of them as somebody who's becoming a friend, because I think that helps with the rejection sensitivity piece. And I also think it helps us remember what to share, when maybe we want to hold back. And then also that we might have a bunch of people who we're interacting with to sort of find that closer relationship. And that's one of the things that I've found is a real thing as adults with ADHD are making friends. So the path to friendship. So I made this little graphic, which is participation, these shared experiences, connecting regularly. So I know many people write me or DM me and say, like, I don't get to connect with people regularly. I meet someone, I like them, and I don't get to connect with them again. And so that's why I'm sort of selling these high interest activities. And we're going to talk more about that in a second, because they really help you to have an excuse or a next step and to bridge from that activity into something more, because we want to connect with the people regularly. We want to bond with them, right? Like, I want my friends to share my interests. I want them to, get why I've been, obsessed with something, or why I have a special interest of some kind. We want to meet outside the activity and then build that friendship and nurture the friendship by seeing them in that circle of participation over and over again, where we're participating and we're sharing experiences, and then eventually they become our friends. In these activities, I have found having a role or an excuse makes things easier. And like everything, I got this from clients and from crowdsourcing. And I have used it hundreds and hundreds of times, and it works. So if I am anxious, if I am shy, if I am maybe just, have had bad experiences making friends, or I feel physically awkward. I don't know if any of you have experienced this, but I've been places where I just feel so awkward. I feel like a teenager again. That if you have a role or an excuse, it's easier to interact with people. You don't feel as awkward. It's not like you're walking across the room to introduce yourself. So that's why I love things like beach cleanups, because you have a role. If you're at a party, you're running the barbecue, you're helping in the kitchen, you're volunteering. If you are, in a cooking class, then you have a role, you're cooking, right? And so you have to ask people for things, you talk to people, maybe you're making something collaboratively. All of those sort of roles and excuses allow you to feel more comfortable, and they allow you in some cases to reach out to people. That's your job. You're running the beach cleanup, you're reaching out to people. And I find that really makes things a lot easier, especially if things have been hard and you're kind of not feeling that confident about this. I also have a quick hack that works really great. I call this a communication. So I don't know about you, but sometimes I forget to text people back. Today, for instance, I'm doing this. I'm sure lots of texts have come in, then they get moved down to the bottom and I forget about them. Or when I'm working, sometimes with my ADHD brain, I can only work. I can only parent. I can only do one thing at a time. And sometimes we don't in the workplace or when we're meeting new friends want to talk about our diagnosis. Sometimes we do. I always do, but I am in a position where I can. A communication is where I explain something about my needs, my situation, or my neurology. I don't have to necessarily say, oh, I am ADHD. You can if you want, but it explains things to people that you're meeting so they understand who you are. So it's something like, hey, I forget to text back, but I do really want to go. So keep bothering me. Thank you. My schedule is so brutal, so I have to plan ahead, but I do really want to go. Or I'm a verbal processor, so I need to process this aloud, and I do that a lot, but let me just reflect this back to you. It explains a need that you have. Maybe you don't love crowds and you meet someone and you're bridging from that activity and you're so excited because they ask you to an event and it's like the last thing you want to do. And it's not great for you and it's not going to be a great situation for you. A communication would be to be like, hey, crowds are tough for me. So I would love to do something. What about we have dinner? Or what about we do this? And you're giving people insight into yourself so that they don't think, wow, she doesn't text back. I guess she's not interested, right? But you can use whatever level of explanation you want for your neurology. And I do this a ton with people in terms of the workplace where maybe they don't want to reveal things. I find it also helps people understand and helps with some of those ADHD traits that many of you have expressed you're concerned about as you meet new people and as you're making friends. I also love to have a pregame. So as we're meeting people, as we're trying to have friendships and relationships, a lot of times that anxiety comes up, those past negative self-talks come up, and it might be something where you benefit from having a little bit of a pregame. And some of that is thinking about what environment works for you, what's my current emotional state. I don't know if you've ever done this, but I've many times run into something because I'm late. Whereas if I had taken 2 minutes in my car to kind of center myself, then I would have maybe had an easier time. So some of that is having that pregame. Okay, no matter when I arrive, I'm going to take 2 minutes to do a mindfulness activity. I'm going to step aside. I'm going to do these things that I need to do. And having those things where you eat, you hydrate, and you really engineer the circumstances so that you feel great. Or as you have perhaps, RSD coming and you're starting to feel that flooding that we get, to have a calming technique that you use to calm the limbic system down and to allow yourself to stop that cycle of the fight, flight, or freeze as it comes forward. So anything you need to do is part of this pregame. And I have a lot more about this on my website and in my videos, but it really, really helps people and it works. Getting ready, part of this is, thinking about, we tend to just say yes, and it's okay to offer an alternative. It's okay to say, listen, I don't do great in this environment. It doesn't make me comfortable. I don't do great in crowds. This is going to trigger me. This is going to be a situation. And what's an alternative you can offer with less noise, less bombardment, to sort of think about, where do I do best? Now, if it's someone's wedding, someone's big occasion, someone's retirement party, sometimes it's important to do those things in order to build a relationship or to show up for people. But I think sometimes we say yes when it's not the right environment for us, and we can offer an alternative. And I've been doing that a lot, and it really works. And again, I got this from crowdsourcing. People suggested this, and I've been using it a ton, and it really works. A lot of us have negative self-talk from the past. When we are entering social situations, we hear those negative messages in our head, that inner critic. Obviously, I want us to work on that inner critic. But one of the things I've been doing with a lot of clients is, instead of that negative self-talk, replacing it with cataloging your wins and your positives as you enter a social situation. So this is what it looks like. I got here. I'm doing this. It's new. I'm in a practice mindset. This is different. I'm really stretching myself. That wasn't bad chit chat. Wow. I talked to 3 different people and I normally talk to none. So it's that thing that you're doing. Yes, Ben. Sorry, my son just came in. It's that thing that you're doing where you are cataloging and noticing your wins. If you have a lot of social anxiety, just by showing up here, you had wins. So I've been doing this with a lot of my clients who have high social anxiety, a lot of rejection sensitivity, and it allows you to feel really positive. I know it sounds a little corny, but it really works. It allows you to feel better about things as you enter a new situation, and it takes care of some of that expectation. Because what I find about us is our expectations are really, really tough. We're tough on ourselves. And you know what? Sometimes just showing up is like, wow, that's a win. So I want us to be kinder to ourselves, and I've been finding cataloging your wins really works. That self-talk is definitely something I want us all to work on when we have that negative self-talk, that inner critic. And so I gave a few phrases that we can think as replacement thoughts for the that was awkward, you're not good at this negative talk that we sometimes have. And I know this doesn't go away right away. I know that it takes time. I know so much of this takes confidence. And that's why I really can't stress enough that this is a practice, a growth, trying new things and learning. A lot of us didn't have those social experiences as kids where we built this positive repertoire and we felt good about things. So now as adults, we're kind of going back and we're kind of starting again. And unfortunately, we have the burdens of the past, but if we can notice that self-talk and have a positive replacement thought, it really does help. And so I'm doing my best. I'm here is one of my favorites. When you arrive or you're at a new place, sometimes you just don't know what to do, like which group to join. I feel really unsure. I feel kind of awkward about this. So one of the tips I have is take a lap. And by that, I mean, rather than trying to, enter a situation and join a group of 2 people or, sit down and choose your seat, you go throughout the party or event and you just say hello to everyone. Go out to the barbecue in the backyard, go into the kitchen where everybody is. That way you also get to scan the situation. You get to see who's there. You get to look at the different people. Maybe there's somebody you'd rather not be with, who you'd like to avoid. Instead of, ending up next to them, now I've taken a lap and I've taken sort of a survey of the whole situation. And I can figure out, and I've also said hello to a bunch of people. And so you can sort of look at and figure out who and where you want to land. And again, remember the job and excuse, because you may be that you still don't know where to land, and then you can volunteer to do something that will give you a job or an excuse for that social situation. Bridging is such a big thing. So many of my clients and people who write me are like, I meet people and I like them and I see them and I'm in these proximity situations, but then I'm kind of friends by situation. If they show up to yoga, I see them and I'm friends with them, but it never bridges. And so one of the big pieces of advice I have there is be ready with a next step. Ask them something you could do that's small. So sometimes people, will say, listen, we both like, this music. Let's go to a concert. That's like a big next step. And sometimes people genuinely can't do that. I'm talking about a small next step. Now, a lot of you wrote in the comments before this webinar that you wanted to know, well, what if someone always says no? This is partly why I want us to engage in multiple activities and be meeting multiple people, because I can't do anything about the fact that someone always says no. They might be genuinely busy. They might be not interested. They might be interested. But I think the biggest thing is if we are trying to meet multiple people and get to know multiple people, then the fact that this one person kind of never takes that next step is less of a sadness for us because we're meeting multiple people. That does happen. I think there are people who are not great about communicating, and maybe they really do want to do something, but they don't communicate. And I think that there are situations where people aren't really understanding that we're asking them. But I think the more stuff we have and the more interactions we have, the greater chance we have of having that next step. So the bridging is a big thing. And I have more about this on my website. I do a lot of videos about it because it's something that we all struggle with and is really important. I don't know about you, but I sometimes opt out of things when I want to make friends and I want to meet people. And so I have this thing where I always say, we have 3 questions you ask yourself before you opt out. One of them is, will this have a long-term impact on my friendship? Because if it's someone's wedding, if it's someone's really important day, it might have a long-term impact. They might be like, wait, you opted out to go sit in your pajamas and watch Brooklyn 99. It's like, yeah, I did. Does it hurt the other person? Like, will they be hurt by it? And will it hurt my friendship goals, right? If I stay home all the time, then I'm not meeting people and I'm not cultivating those relationships. And this is just a trick I use for anything. You could have 3 questions for the environment that you want. You could have 3 questions about things that you really value in relationships and to see, is this person worth pursuing more? Do they meet these 3 criteria? And then my other advice that I've been weaving throughout this webinar is meet lots of people, because I know this is really hard for some of us. And so I'm not delusional. I know some of you are going to say, I am not doing that. But the more that we have options, the less we are likely to tolerate behavior that is not good for us, more toxic, not appreciative of us. So meeting people also helps with that scarcity mindset where we're like, I know this person doesn't treat me well, but this is my only option. And so it gives us opportunities. Now, there are studies that show people are happy, if they have one other friend, and that might be all you're looking for. It really depends on your goals. But I think as we're trying to meet people, if we have more options, then we feel less that one person who didn't say yes to coffee. It really is less disappointing, I think. I like to have questions in my back pocket of things I can do to help a conversation along, things when a conversation gets stuck. So I wanted to put this in here as we wrap up. And so I always pick things that are kind of neutral. So I'm not getting into politics. I'm not getting into anything too heavy if that's not the person's purview. And, just what's the current episode of a show? What are you binging? What are you doing this weekend? Something that I can say to sort of chat with people, especially if I get nervous and your mind goes blank and you can't think of anything. And then finally, as we're wrapping up, I know keeping up with people is so hard, and often that is a blocker in us nurturing friendships. We just forget to text back, forget to check social media. We have this out of sight, out of mind thing. So I like things to be part of a routine so that they're on autopilot. I always answer texts and DMs while I wait for my kid's bus, because that's twice a day that I'm out there. And sometimes I'm out there for as much as half an hour waiting. But I pick an anchor so that I'm always doing that thing. And therefore, that's my time when I respond to people. And there are people with ADHD who find they have to answer immediately. I get that. I find that like super distracting, and I can't always keep that up. But picking a time of day, having it be a routine, setting reminders, and then the all-time great one is a body double, someone who you are sort of pairing with to remember these kind of things and to create accountability can be incredibly powerful. So I hope that this has helped a little bit about demystifying how we kind of make friends and fostering friendships as an adult. I know that there's tons of other topics, and I do have a lot on my website for free. All right, back over to the folks at Attitude.
Wonderful. Caroline, thank you so much. There was a lot to digest there, a lot of helpful advice. I wanted to just quickly, before we head into our Q&A, thank Brain Balance one more time for sponsoring this webinar. And I also wanted to pivot back to our survey that we asked at the beginning here. We asked people in general, what is your biggest impediment to making friends? And number one, absolutely, was fear of rejection. And I saw an interesting theme here in the questions that I think is related. And that is people who say they have a tendency to choose friends who are toxic or otherwise very needy. Could this be that we are sort of subliminally drawn to people who we think won't reject us because they need us too much, but it ends up being unhealthy?
I think it could be. Like, a lot of adults tell me that they're in unhealthy relationships, but they feel like, well, we have this negative self-talk. Well, I don't always text back. Well, I'm always not a great friend, so I have to kind of take it. Or we could be drawn to people who don't treat us very well. I think that there's a bunch of things, but I don't want us to be in those relationships. I want us to have healthy relationships we deserve.
Right. You made the comment at the beginning that really hit me, that you said, that you would rather spend an afternoon with us than with anyone else. And I totally agree. I mean, the people in this community are genuine, they're real, they're vulnerable, they're empathetic. Like, this is a very special community, and we deserve friends who appreciate those things about us. And so some people said, like, okay, I find myself gravitating toward these toxic people. Is there some litmus test? Some questions that I can ask myself to determine, like, is this person going to be a healthy friend?
Well, and I love that you brought that up. I actually just came up with something, and it'll be on my website very soon. It's not there yet, about red flags, like friendship red flags, because a lot of adults were asking me for that. They were like, what are the friendship green lights? Like, someone's interested, or what are the red flags? And I think one of the things too that came up when I was putting that together is if someone is always about them and they don't care about your needs, that's not a reciprocal friendship, and that's toxic. And the other thing is that goes back to why I don't want us to rush into friendships, because many ADHD adults tell me that they end up in relationships because we rush in, because we share very quickly, that then they were like, oh, now I have to back out of this relationship. And so if we give it more time and we get to know someone, then those red flags will become apparent. And we can say, oh, I'm not going to pursue this because I saw that they only talk about themselves, or that they're only about themselves, or that they say, these really, mean things, and I don't like that. All those red flags can be revealed.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's helpful. So the other question we got regarding, rejection or fear of rejection being an impediment to forming new relationships, a lot of people saying that as they're starting to form a friendship and they don't get that response, the response to the text message or the invitation, that they take it so to heart that it's really hard for them to get over that, give the person another chance. And their impulse is to turtle, right? To go into their shell.
Yeah, I call it cocooning, right? Because it's like, oh my gosh, I came out of my cocoon and now I'm going back in. And I totally get that. And I want to say it is not that I don't get that is hard, because I have had those feelings myself. But I think that's why I bring up the fact that often we are pinning a lot of hopes on that person, or we are making up a story in our head that they rejected us. For all we know, this literally just happened to me today. A person didn't call when they thought they should, that they said they would, and it turned out that their entire refrigerator died, and they had to take everything out of the fridge before the repairman was coming, and they forgot about me. But that happens. So we make up this story. We have a story in our head about, that, and we feel very much that rejection when in fact we don't know what it is, and it could be something else. Or we have placed a lot on that relationship as if it is a friendship when it is really a situationship or an acquaintance, and they might cancel. And so I think there's like a tendency for that response. And I think part of this is our own self-talk to sort of pause and say, what evidence do I have that they have actually rejected me? And I think the other thing is to see if this becomes a pattern, right? If it's a pattern, then maybe you don't want to be in a relationship with them. And to sort of have the self-talk of, I am taking this as a rejection. It may not be a rejection, and to be aware of your rejection sensitivity and do that work on when I feel this way, like, what is it that I can do to feel better without going fully into my cocoon and just opting out of everything.
Mm-hmm. Very helpful. The second most prevalent impediment to new friendships was social anxiety, people said. And so we touched on that a little bit. Hiding out, the cocooning could be a reflection of that. But I wonder if, could it be that our propensity to overshare is a form of social anxiety? That's a big theme here, that people feel they need to fill the space, and they feel, someone said, I feel like I'm making the other person feel comfortable by telling them everything about myself, but I'm actually doing the opposite. Like, what is that all about, and how can we rein that in?
Okay, so I think there's many things that's about. I think it can be about a bunch of different things. So the first thing I do with people when we're trying to move past oversharing is like literally trying to figure out, what is it about for you? Because it can be a self-regulation thing. It can be I don't think about how well I know this person, and I just launch into this with everybody as if everybody is the same level of trust and level of intimacy. It can be like, I can't take silence. I have adult social skills groups I've run before where people are working on like I have to be able to have silence, but I can't. So I just fill it in, like you said. So the first thing is like, is it an emotional dysregulation thing? Like I am so triggered and so emotional in the moment. And the next, person at the reception desk of the doctor's office that I talk to, I tell them my life story. And the next thing is always to try to practice thinking about what is my emotional state right now? How well do I know this person? And sort of to practice not sharing everything with everyone, and to hold back. And even if you're in the middle of the conversation and you're going down the rabbit hole and you're oversharing and you notice that about yourself, that's okay. Now start to rein it back in, because this takes a lot of practice. I mean, I do this with people for weeks and weeks where we're practicing telling a tighter story, sort of staying on track. What's the point of my story? What am I telling? And then as I talk to people, remembering my level of relationship with them and my level of trust, and not sharing, my social security number with every stranger, which totally I resemble that remark. And then the silence thing is a big thing too. Like if I feel like we can fill silence or we can have conversations, but oversharing makes us more vulnerable because we're sharing our most intimate stuff with someone who we don't know them. We don't know if we can trust them. So I definitely think we have to practice, because even being present and sort of feeling more regulated and being a little more centered, that takes a lot of practice.
Absolutely. I wonder too, if you feel like the oversharing goes together with a tendency toward people pleasing. That is showing up a lot in the comments, that people feel, whether it's sort of low self-esteem or rejection in the past, that they see in themselves a propensity to people please, which means saying yes to way too many things, maybe oversharing, giving of themselves in a way that doesn't benefit them.
I think it is in a way, because it's that giving, right? It's that giving of yourself to other people without checking them out first, right? It's a mindset that we sometimes have, like, do they deserve me? Am I going to share this with them? Let me feel them out. That doesn't tend to be our mindset. Our mindset tends to be to give, to share, to feel. We love that intimacy. We love to zing with people. We love to feel like they're our best friends after 5 minutes. And I think the people pleasing also comes from, pretending that you like kayaking or saying yes to it because you want to people please, when really, like, it's not how I want to spend an evening or an afternoon rather. So I think it does all kind of come together. And by the way, I don't mean to keep mentioning my website, but I do have tons and tons on all of this on my website for free.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah. Some people are writing in to say that they challenge themselves to ask a certain number of questions before they start talking about themselves, like almost gamifying.
Yes. I love to gamify. I love to, see what I can, sort of learn about people, how many questions. I sometimes count when people say certain things, like if they're bragging about themselves, like how many times do they mention where they went to college? But I definitely like to gamify things. And I definitely think I just want to say this to just make people feel better. Like, there's several steps to eliminate or to curtail, because we never eliminated oversharing, and to get better at this. And it takes, saying, okay, this is what I'm working on. And every time you enter a conversation, working on a piece of it and building on that. So it takes time. And then we do have moments where, even with all this practice, like, I have a bad day, I'm dysregulated, I see someone at the post office and I tell them my life story. And then tomorrow, maybe I'll do better. It's complicated.
Mm-hmm. And maybe it's the flip side, I'm not sure, but a lot of questions today also about this out of sight, out of mind. So friends, family members who live farther away with whom we don't interact in person, and just not reaching out as much as we should. And, that hurts feelings. And any tips on getting better about those small check-ins that don't necessarily have to be like a half an hour phone call, right? But making that a habit.
Well, there's a couple things too. I think a lot of people had commented that they have a lot of shame. And so then they feel like it's been too long and then they abandon the relationship because they feel that there's been shame. When in fact, people are thrilled to hear from you. People are thrilled to hear from you. So I think we have to banish the shame. The other thing is, I think we have to know that it doesn't have to be a half an hour phone call. It could literally be a text. It could be a message on Facebook. It could be a small thing to just check in. And I think the best way for us is usually to anchor that or to create a routine around it. And it could be, it's every New Year's Eve. It could be it's, the first Saturday of the month. It could be that you have someone you partner with in your family or in your friend group, your college friend, something to remind you like, hey, remind me, let's do this together. It could be something that's established in, so it's not manual mode where I have to remember, it's automatic pilot. And so, it's something that's established where you all get together on Zoom or something. But I think to have a routine and infrastructure around it, set reminders in your calendar, something is really powerful because otherwise time passes and people are out of sight, out of mind because we're juggling so much and our executive function is taxed so much that on a daily basis, we don't remember because, I forgot to get paper for the printer and I have to run out in the middle of the day and then all is lost, So we have a lot going on.
Yeah. And I really liked what you mentioned earlier about sort of stacking habits. Like you were saying that you text when you're waiting at the bus stop. And, that I've found personally, like that works for me that, okay, like when I'm waiting for the coffee I'm waiting for the coffee pot, that's the time that I do like a quick check-in, something like that. Those routines, they're hard to establish, no lie, but they can help with these little things. And as you said, like people love to hear from you. It's never too late. And you shouldn't not try. Okay. So we are almost at time, but I'm going to ask one more question and sneak it in. And that is just for these quite a few people who say that, they do have that track record of making plans and then the social anxiety gets the better of them at the last minute. They cancel and now they feel like they aren't getting invited. And the rejection sensitive dysphoria is like making it all worse. How do we break this cycle?
That's where I said the 3 questions, because I got those 3 questions because of my clients with social anxiety and the people who write me and say, this is my pattern, exactly like you described. And so I want us to have some routines to help our social anxiety. And then I also want us to have something that we ask ourselves. And by the way, that's where we could also explain to people, I really want to come, but I'm having this anxiety, whatever you feel comfortable with, and to plan ahead. Because one of the things about social anxiety is feeling like it won't work out and the catastrophizing. So I literally lay out and map, where are you going to sit and draw tables with my clients? Like we figure out ways so that they feel more comfortable. But I think that, again, that tendency to opt out, having a buddy, having someone who'll take you with them, somebody's going to pick you up, somebody who you are meeting, and then asking yourself the 3 questions so that you are less likely to just sort of opt out and forget that you really do want this. And by the way, I can't stress enough to find someone who helps you with all this. Find a professional who helps you because it is It is real. It is very hard. And I totally get that.
100%. Wonderful. Well, unfortunately, we are out of time, but Caroline, thank you so much for today's webinar. We just got so many wonderful comments here from everyone who attended, and I know I personally got a lot out of it. And so thank you for leading this conversation, and thank you to everyone who joined us and contributed your questions and your experiences as well. We hope that you will join us next week. We do these free webinars every week. So if you want to make sure you don't miss any future Attitude webinars, you can sign up at attitudemag.com/newsletters, and we will let you know about each new webinar. If you're listening in replay or podcast mode, you can visit attitudemag.com and search for podcast number 478 to access all those webinar resources. You can also click on the episode description wherever you stream your podcasts. If you support the work we're doing here at Attitude to strengthen the ADHD community, we encourage you to visit attitudemag.com/subscribe and sign up for Attitude Magazine. If you do it now, you can take advantage of our 2-for-1 holiday offer and get a subscription for someone else who could benefit from a little more ADHD understanding. But for now, Caroline, thank you again so much for today's conversation. We really enjoyed it, and we hope to see you again soon.
I will happily come.
Have a great day, everybody.
For more Attitude podcasts and information on living well with attention deficit, visit attitudemag.com. That's ADDITUDEMAG.com.
You've worked hard for what you have. Your money, your assets, your 401k, and home. Isn't it all worth protecting? Nearly 1 in 4 consumers have been a victim of identity theft. LifeLock Ultimate Plus helps protect your finances with up to $3 million in reimbursement. LifeLock alerts you to identity threats you might miss. And if your identity is stolen, your dedicated U.S.-based restoration specialist will work to fix it. Let LifeLock help protect what you've worked so hard for. Save 25% off your first year on LifeLock Ultimate Plus at LifeLock.com/aware. Terms apply.